What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some very important levels to watch for on Tesla for tomorrow that will help you get a very, very good understanding of where the share price may end up going, and also what's going on with the news and data affecting the whole market in Tesla over the next couple of days. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about what happened with Tesla for today, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, in just about 9 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market and Tesla. Tesla was down 3.32% for the day. We were expecting some downside in my previous video. I warned everyone that there was a risk of downside after we got some bearish news that came out. But the real question is, will Tesla continue to sink, or can Tesla try to bounce? And this is going to be determined by how Tesla reacts to some major support and how it ends up holding at these key levels, which I will talk about in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about the news for Tesla. Why did Tesla sell off? Here's the answer. This big piece of news came out as Tesla got some cuts on its overall earnings forecasts and profitability by Goldman Sachs. Remember, Goldman Sachs is very respected, very credible in the eyes of investors, and they're saying that the price cuts by Tesla have led to their margins getting hit even more, and they're saying that they're basically dropping their overall earnings forecast for the company. They're saying that the price cuts will hurt the company's profits even more. They mentioned that as time goes on, Tesla may see, declines just for like the short term, and this had a very big effect on Tesla's price action. Now, despite this, we had some good news that also came out. We saw the president of Turkey and also Saudi Arabia all in talks for a potential EV factory. This is some good news for Tesla, as if this is announced, this would be very, very bullish for their deliveries capabilities and their growth as time goes on. Now, with the big investments that have been made by other countries and Tesla's foreign investments as well, this would be good for them simultaneously, and we're going to see more growth for the company as it enters this major, major pivot point in its company. So this is good news for Tesla. If Tesla does end up announcing something like this, or if Elon Musk keeps on talking to Saudi Arabia, there could be some big news coming involving this about building a massive, massive factory, and that would be very bullish for the long term as well. Now, for the short term, there's also this news that came out about how Tesla's launched the wall connector app integration as it opens to non-Tesla EVs. And this is some very good news for them simultaneously, because this allows them to include a bigger audience to their overall charging locations and give them a better user experience. So with this allows the owners to register their chargers in the Tesla app in order to use the Wi-Fi enabled features like charging schedules all through the app. And this is very, very awesome. Tesla allows any wall connector owners, whether they own them or not, whether they own, even if they're like non-Tesla owners, they could still or eventually be able to use this. This is a very, very good feature, and this will be more convenient for more and more users. So very, very awesome stuff. Very, very awesome news for Tesla. But besides that, the biggest piece of news was the Goldman Sachs news about the cuts and their lowered forecast for Tesla moving forward, and that's part of why Tesla sold off. Now, when it comes to the market, I just want to remind everyone that for Wednesday, we have the FOMC meeting with Jerome Powell announcing the rate hike decision and some very, very big market moving events coming. Before that happens, we have a very quiet day tomorrow for Tuesday. There's not really much coming out, just some like housing data in the morning. And besides that, there's not really anything I'm seeing that's too significant. So Tuesday is going to be a very, very quiet day, but Wednesday is going to be pretty insane. FOMC days tend to be very crazy. We could see Jerome Powell either pump the markets very hard or cause the market to sink. The best thing to do is just be very patient and hear what he has to say. Right now, at the time I'm recording this, the most probable outcome is going to be that the Fed skips the rate hike during this meeting and then they raise again later on. That is very probable, but not a guarantee. I can't promise anything about the future, but I do believe that there's a good chance of one more rate hike coming for the year, one final rate hike because of the increase we saw in inflation, but it's going to be very modest, nothing too insane, another like 25 basis point hike or something like that. I think that's very possible. I think there's a good chance of this happening after we saw some relatively high levels of inflation in a way. I wouldn't say it was like that insane, but it is a little bit hot relative to before on the PCE. Not to mention what we saw from PPI and CPI. So, seeing these changes relative to before, they're leading to some changes in sentiment from investors, and that could affect the Fed's policies. As far as Tesla goes, RBC Capital was the last analyst to really say that Tesla is going to outperform the market. And so far, it was doing that for the last week, but now starting today, Tesla underperformed a bit after some bearish news came out. As a result, the price price ratio is kind of dropping a little bit as Tesla's losing some strength. And when it comes to daily seasonality, we tend to be green only about 51% of the time on Tuesdays. Basically, a coin flip, so nothing too crazy. We tend to see more green during about the fourth hour of the day or around 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, not to mention 2 p.m. Eastern time when Tesla tends to do a little bit better. But remember, there was a big red flag I was talking about, and that is as Tesla was pumping, right? When Tesla was pumping towards this like 280 zone, it was going up and up and up, but simultaneously the shorting started going up on Tesla as well. Notice this uptrend in the shorting. We started to see more shorts piling in, and all of a sudden we got some bad news and Tesla starting to look a little bit weaker. So please be careful, everyone. The shorts can be absolutely relentless sometimes. They've been shorting the more Tesla went up. So the last time we have this data was from Friday. We saw about 51 million Tesla shares being shorted. Please be very careful and make sure you're prepared for what's about to come. Now, when it comes to volume, it's not really that crazy high volume. It's a little bit low, but we're still seeing Tesla dropping on it. So the selling is still making up the majority of it. Now let's break down how Tesla's looking. Let's break down how the charts are looking. So looking at Tesla, I just want to mention that this is looking like a very, very nice distribution phase, and it's looking a little bit more weak from a technical standpoint. However, when we look at the chart, I'm going to go to the 4-hour time frame and show you guys something. Look at the 4-hour time frame and look at the 50 EMA with the extended hours on, and you will notice that Tesla's holding the 50 EMA as support. And this is the critical level for Tesla now since we broke below 266, which is not the best of signs. So now it's looking weaker. Overall, the bearish momentum is getting stronger looking at the MACD. And Tesla is trying to hold this 50 EMA right now at this 264.5 zone. Now, when I talk about us holding it, we did break below it just temporarily, but you have to study the price action. We came below it just a teeny bit, then we went right back up. We touched it again, we went right back up. And then during the after hours, we touched and we still are trying to hold above it. So you can see it's holding so far. We haven't truly broken below it. So we're going to be watching that tomorrow. Does Tesla break below it? If it does end up doing that, we're going to likely come all the way down to close to 260, if not 257, very, very soon. Now, if we bounce off of it and try to hold above it temporarily, there's a good chance Tesla's going to try to like bounce a little bit in the morning with the market, and it may make it a small attempt to bounce. But even if Tesla does bounce first off, the thing is, if we establish a lower high and we don't get back to this 280 area, Tesla could still be on a downtrend as we have this bearish divergence, which could have signaled the top at 278. And then Tesla could pump and then end up dropping later on. So I'm going to try to like visualize this a lot better on TradingView so it's easier to see. So if Tesla ends up breaking down, let me just make this as clear as possible. You're going to be watching the key supports at that 264.5 zone. So you want to see Tesla hold that support, which is where the 50 EMA happens to be on the 4-hour time frame. I'm using the 1-hour time frame right now, which is why it looks a little bit different. I do apologize about that, but I need to focus on this one because it's much better, at least in my opinion, to look at and use. So for Tesla, if we break that support, there's a risk of it as the days go on for Tesla to come all the way down to 260, if not to 257, which is where our gap support happens to be like way down here. And if 257 fails for Tesla, it's going to likely fill the gap down to 250. So there's a risk of some major downside if we break that key support. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying hypothetically if there's bad news. But what do I think is most likely going to happen? My gut is telling me that it's going to try to bounce a little bit first before we see some kind of drop like that. So there's a chance that it's going to try to rebound first and retest 270 before it comes back down. And I think that there's a good chance, as long as there's no bad news, that that's going to be the most likely case. Tesla comes back up to this zone right here first, and we're going to basically not necessarily pump and establish a major uptrend, but this could be an attempt to make like a higher low. A lower high. That's what I meant to say. A lower high compared to these highs right here. And then Tesla could end up sinking once again, thanks to Jerome Powell in the future. It may just pop and drop tomorrow, and then Jerome Powell will determine which way we go for Wednesday and beyond. But there is a risk of Tesla later on coming back down to these lower levels. It just may not go in a straight line, right? Just like how Tesla dropped right here before we came all the way down from this 278 area all the way down to 265, which is what we saw today. We came down a bit. We pumped a little bit. We came down. We pumped. We came down. pumped a tiny bit, then we came down even more. So I think the same trend is going to follow. Tesla pops a little bit first, and then we start to see some downside. And I think that's what's most likely going to happen for tomorrow. As long as there's no like major bad news that comes out, I think that's going to be the case. That's where I'm leaning towards. So watch for Tesla to try to bounce off this support for now. If it breaks below it, that's going to be a very bearish case. If we bounce off of it, which I think we're most likely going to do, we could be coming back up to like 270, trade sideways up here, chop a little bit, then reject. And then we could see a bigger drop a little bit later. Maybe not as soon as tomorrow, but later on for Tesla. There's a risk of that. All right, so that's my view of Tesla. When it comes to SPY, I do want to note that there is potential for SPY to push up a little bit higher, but it may not be that insane. So I just want to note that on SPY, we have the 4-hour EMA. I'm sorry, it's actually the 30 minutes. Sorry about that, guys. The 30 minutes, 50 EMA. I was actually referring to this. This is where we got this rejection. I think we're going to backtest 444.5 tomorrow. And there could be an inverse head and shoulders attempt on SPY. So it might try to go a little higher thanks to Aapl, but it either gets stalled, in my opinion, at 444.5, or maybe it goes to 446 if we break above it. So we're going to be watching one of these highs. And then we may just trade sideways after that. We're not going to do too much after that. And then we're going to be reacting to FOMC. So I see a little bit more upside. Part of why I'm saying that is because of Aapl. If you look at Aapl, Aapl is starting to look a little bit more bullish. Let me just show you what Aapl looks like on TradingView. I know I'm switching between these guys. I'm sorry about that. I just do this because they're different technicals I'm using. And I think it looks a lot better depending on which one you're using for clarity. But anyways, for Aapl, okay, we have a potential nice accumulation of cup and handle forming, and I don't think that this move is done. I think Apple's going to push towards 180 very soon. I think there's a little bit more upside coming. And I think Aapl may help the market pump a little bit more, just temporarily. And we're going to be watching to see what Jerome Powell causes after that. So it might hit 180 and start shopping around a bit. Aapl may have a little bit more upside, and this could help the market to some extent, just based off technicals alone. So with Aapl potentially pushing, this could help Tesla and the market push up just a little bit. But then don't forget that Tesla could just be establishing a lower high compared to before, around 270. For SPY, this thing could push, in my opinion, towards 444.5, if not 446. And then upon that push, that's going to likely lead it to different levels. Now, when it comes to other tickers out there, such as Nvda, I just want to mention that Nvda is not looking too great, but not too bad either. It's kind of in the middle. It hit some key support, came a little bit lower as a liquidity grab, and then it's attempting to establish an inverse head and shoulders. But we need to see it break above 442. If Nvda breaks and holds 442, it's going to likely push for 450. That's going to be a key resistance to watch for. If we fail to do so, if it breaks below 437, we're going to see this thing come all the way down to 435, then potentially all the way down back to like 427 or so. That's going to be very important for it. We're going to be watching these very important support zones. But there is a potential inverse head and shoulders forming on it, so there's a good chance it's going to attempt to break 442 and then break higher. The odds do favor an attempt for it to break 442, so we're going to be watching that for tomorrow. And if it breaks it, like I said before, we could get very close to 450. There may be a temporary pump in the markets before FOMC, so be very careful and just know that that is what some technicals are suggesting. Aapl is making that very clear as well. I also want to note that for the QQQ, 372 could be tested. We have a potential inverse head and shoulders as well. We could see it come up a little bit higher. We're going to be watching to see what happens with Jerome Powell, because he could lead to a big change. I want everyone to be very careful. But this looks like an inverse head and shoulders on the triple Q. We could see this thing try to rebound a little bit. So we're going to be watching this all very, very carefully. And the QQQ could try to push for 372 tomorrow, maybe a little bit higher. There's a chance it's going to try to do so. But like I said before, don't get your hopes up too high, because historically this time of the year tends to be weak. And even if the market does pump a little bit, there could be more downside coming later on after the FOMC meeting or something like that. So just be prepared for that. Don't be too complacent. To add on to this, I just wanted to mention that the VIX is adding conviction for me, because when you look at the VIX, there's a possible head and shoulders developing on it, just like this on the 30 minutes time frame. This may lead to downside for the VIX as the market pumps a little bit, also towards this imbalance right here around this 13.5 area. Looks like it may be retested as the VIX is looking weaker. So if the VIX is truly going to start downtrending, the market may temporarily uptrend approaching FOMC. And then after FOMC, we don't know what's going to happen. Jerome Powell could give us the rug. So you never know, guys. You want to be open-minded. He could also pump the markets, who knows? But I just want to give you guys that warning. The dollar is also starting to downtrend. We're barely testing the 200 EMA on the 30 minutes time frame. If we break below this and 105, if the dollar starts downtrending more, this could be bullish for the market. So we're starting to get some signals that the market wants to bounce a bit, but we need to see the dollar break below 105 first for this to be confirmed. So we're just going to wait for that. Anyways, now I'm just going to quickly talk about a couple of other tickers. The IWM looks to me like it's very close to support. We have a bullish divergence on it. If it holds 182 tomorrow, this thing could rebound and try to get back up to like 183.5. My gut tells me there could be a tiny little bounce. It may not be that big, just a very small one approaching FOMC. So far, it's looking relatively weak. It's going to attempt to retest 8.8, but it may slow down. There's no true sign of this thing truly breaking out yet. It still looks kind of weak to me. So I could see it still remain in the 8 to 8.8 range, but I think it's going to just range trade tomorrow. And this could be another buying opportunity coming for the longer term in case you're interested in getting shares. But there could be more like downside first, maybe for like September, later weeks of September 1st beforehand. On the 4-hour time frame, it's looking kind of weak. So even if it does get like some small rebound, could eventually come down to like the 8.2 area over the next couple of weeks, within the next month or so, and that could be another buying opportunity for the long term, the super long term for years to come. For Microsoft, it's looking kind of strong. Last time I checked, we have a potential inverse head and shoulders, nice bounce. I could see it getting back up to 332. There is a good chance of that happening. AMD looks like it has potential bullish divergence. It may try to push up for 104. To turn bullish, you want to see it get above 104 and hold it, and this thing can start pushing for 106 plus. But 104 could be tested tomorrow on AMD. I think there's a good chance of that. Netflix, from a technical standpoint, it looks like it's about to get a bullish cross on the 4-hour, but it's still getting very close to this support. So I could see it kind of range trading a bit between 392 to 396. Then it may try to bounce and try to get back up to 400, maybe as soon as tomorrow. But then it all depends on FOMC from there. On SPX, this thing is starting to show some life because when you look at the 30 minutes time frame, there's a potential inverse head and shoulders here. It's not as clean as like SPYs or the QQQs, but it is a possibility. And we could see this thing start pushing for the 20 EMA again, maybe a little bit higher. So there's a risk and a potential for some upside on it. Looking at something else like Coinbase, it looks to me like 80 is going to be tested, and this thing may try to base around there. So watch that very carefully for all the Coinbase investors. For Google, it's showing some strength. We have potential bullish wedge trying to form on it. We're going to be watching it test 140. I think it's going to try to push up towards this 140 area and then just kind of trade sideways from there. Unfortunately, it's not looking like it's breaking it just yet, but I think that the overall trend is still favoring the bulls a little bit more. Now, with this bearish divergence on it, it may cool off to like 138.78, then bounce off that and push for 140 plus. That seems very possible. Amazon is also looking decent. I mean, if you look at Amazon, it has a bullish divergence. It's going to probably push for 140.69 tomorrow, maybe even 141. I think there's a good chance 141 is going to be retested before FOMC. And then for Meta, this looks bullish. We have a bullish wedge developing on it. We could see a breakouts towards this 305 plus area, if not 307. So it looks to me like there's more upside coming with the potential slanted inverse head and shoulders and a nice looking bullish wedge, which could lead to a breakout. So it looks more bullish to me as well. We could see some upside on Meta. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for listening. I want to end the video from here. Tesla could see a little bit of upside. There's a real possibility of it. It is looking kind of weak on the 30 minutes time frame, though. There may be a little upside for this back test towards this like 270 area before we see more downside. But just in case there's bad news, hypothetically, since I can't always predict the news, there is a risk of Tesla, retesting its very important EMA. If the 50 EMA breaks on Tesla, then we could see that like move to the downside. There's a risk of that potentially happening. Don't forget to watch this very carefully on the 4-hour time frame. If Tesla breaks the 50 EMA, we're going to turn bearish. It's going to be a bad sign for it. If it bounces, which I think it most likely is going to make an attempt to bounce with the market and retest 270, we might see something like this where Tesla attempts to bounce temporarily, but then there could be downside coming later on. So this is what I think is more probable. I'm not just calling both sides. I think it's more likely we're going to do this. So watch for a potential bounce on Tesla. Watch it try to rebound just a little bit back to 270, and then we'll see if Tesla could hold. It may be very weak up there. And if it establishes a lower high, right, we have this trend line acting as resistance that could be forming. So if this acts as, its resistance and it rejects off this area like right about here, then that could lead to more downside as well. It pops a little bit, rejects off the trend line, and then eventually drops later on. All right, so that's just my warning for all the Tesla investors out there. Hopefully this video was helpful. please remain calm, cool, and collected and do what you have to do, guys. I will see you guys very soon tomorrow morning. Thank you and peace out.